There was an interesting article in the Washington Post recently that talked about how the coronavirus had made it nearly impossible for Americans who wanted to renounce their citizenship to do so, with the pandemic becoming a very convenient excuse for not just the U.S., but governments all around the world to do things as simple as denying to renew your passport, but in this case, also refusing to allow you to give up your passport. And for a lot of expats around the world, no doubt that has personal freedom and financial consequences, that they are basically stuck as U.S. citizens. And I'm going to share with you today why I think it's so important. Not that you renounce your citizenship, because I think that most people probably shouldn't do that, whether you're American or whether you're from any other country that may make your life difficult in the future. It is an extreme step. But I do want to draw your attention to the fact that as time goes on, bank accounts, companies in other jurisdictions, residence programs, citizenships, and the kind of strategies that we talk about, including expatriating, become more difficult. And there are always convenient excuses why things just can't happen as easily or as quickly as you may need them to. Not even want, but need them to. Let me share with you the first part of the article. This is from the Washington Post. And it starts out talking about Aline, 59, a nursing assistant who lives in Bayonne, France, said she was shocked to receive a letter from her bank in February warning that her account would be closed if she could not provide a U.S. Social Security number. The problem? She'd had little to do with the United States since leaving California as a baby. When she tried to arrange an appointment to apply at one of the U.S. Embassy in Paris, she found that the service had been suspended during the coronavirus pandemic. Months later, after receiving another warning from her bank, she decided to renounce her U.S. citizenship. I never thought of myself as an American, she said. After all, she was born there. Citizenship by birth. Anyone born on U.S. soil, even if they leave the next day, is an American for the rest of their life. And they generally don't let you give it up when you're 9 years old, and they want you to be at least 18. I never thought of myself as an American, she said, the article continues. But neither the embassy nor other U.S. consulates in France would process her request. The service had ground to a halt worldwide. Aline said, "It seems to me that the U.S. administration is doing everything to prevent us from renouncing U.S. citizenship." The article says Aline's not alone. U.S. government data suggests that a record number of Americans are seeking to give up citizenship this year. And who can blame them? One of the things that I talked about in my YouTube video on why I feel best about having left the United States is not because I'm saving money on taxes, because quite frankly, I'm not really. I was legally paying zero or close to zero in the United States for many years. But what I have is a sense of peace. I have a sense of peace that if I wanted to get out because of something really draconian that came out, I don't have to worry about it. The U.S. government can do whatever they want. Go ahead. It shouldn't affect me. But Aline is not in that same boat. She says disruptions to consular services around the world have made it nearly impossible for some Americans to stop being Americans. One expert on dual citizenship says the hurdles have never been higher. And the Washington Post spoke to half a dozen U.S. citizens abroad who said pandemic-related restrictions had delayed their plans to give up their citizenship. The potential consequences: closed bank accounts, canceled loans, and disrupted lives. This is a situation that is different than many of the people that we talk to here, the accidental Americans, people who perhaps didn't even know they were a U.S. citizen, who then later get a letter from their bank or from the U.S. government asking for taxes. You may remember Boris Johnson, who was born in, I believe, New York, lived there for merely a couple years, never really thought of himself as American. Not only had to fight with the U.S. government and had to pay, as I recall, capital gains tax on the sale of his home in London, which would otherwise be exempt in the UK, but not in the US. But also had some difficulties flying to Mexico when he couldn't fly through the US without a US passport, which he didn't have because he didn't think of himself as American. Now, many of the Americans who are watching us have lived in the U.S. their entire lives, and their situation is different. But understand that an American is an American is an American in the eyes of the rest of the world. And if your bank doesn't take Americans, they don't care why you're American. They just simply might disrupt your life. And if France is the only country that someone like Aline knows, she might find herself unbanked when countries simply refused, or when banks simply refuse in her country to deal with her. It seems like something that the politicians that are against people going overseas would be interested in. poor woman who just wants to have her normal job, wants to have a place to put her salary, but they simply don't care. Now, my first thought when they talk to all these expats, by the way, is I have been interviewed by the BBC and The Economist, and we've been in CNN and elsewhere. Why do these people never call me? Because how many people are willing to go on the record? I think all the people in this article said, please don't mention my full name. I'm here. I talk about it all the time. I have talked about expatriating from the United States, and I've taken the personal risk of doing so in the interest of putting out information that almost no one is willing to go on the record and talk about. Not only the strategy, but the emotions, the feelings. And I've given credit, by the way. I had a personally very good experience with the embassy. I never thought embassies around the world were very helpful to me when I was a citizen, but when I finally decided to go in and cut the cord, they were very nice and very professional. So you're going to always hear that from me. But I think that besides that, what this year has really shown us is what I've been telling you for years. Your government doesn't care about you, particularly if you are living overseas, particularly if you are doing anything differently than anyone else. Let's be honest, 99+% of people in whatever country you're from live, or were born, go to school, live, have a job, have a bank account, have a retirement account, have a family, have a spouse, have children, have their investments, have everything all in one country. A very good percentage would never even consider, or has never even considered, the idea of let's go somewhere else. Now, obviously, if you live in Afghanistan, sure, most people would like to leave Afghanistan. But most people in the countries, if you're watching this, are not doing the things that we talk about here. It is weird. It is unique. That's why, to me, it's so valuable. But no one's going to understand that. And it's not like any politician is going to be looking out for you, which is exactly why I believe that you need options. Because if you're stranded somewhere overseas and you want to give up your citizenship, you need to have other options. And I think exercising those options sooner rather than later is a good thing. When I decided to leave the U.S., I realized the writing was on the wall. It wasn't about, so many of the issues that people talk about. It was, this is going to become harder and harder and harder to become a citizen of, and I don't want to stick around and think what they're going to do next. It's simply, I don't want to wait around for the next thing. A guy punches you in the face, I don't want to stick around and see if next he'll stab me with a knife. I just don't. Because I realized they don't care about you. There may be individual people who work there who are nice, and I've seen that. But as a macro policy, they don't care. And there have been other stories about people who are dual Hong Kong U.S. citizens. You'd think for all the much ballyhooed whining from the U.S. about what's happening in Hong Kong, you'd think that they would want to help their own citizens who go to the U.S. consulate. But no, they were turned away. They don't care about you. Now, if you want to do the stuff that we're talking about, if you want to get a second passport, if you want to move some money, I suggest you do all these things legally. We're not talking about hiding money. We're not talking about anything less than full transparency. We believe in following the laws here, but I do believe in having options. And here's why from the article. Quote, reasons to give up a passport vary, as we discussed. The expert they spoke to said that in his experience, some of those looking to give up their citizenship were doing so because they've had enough of President Trump, perhaps, or pandemic chaos, surely, U.S. passport no longer very good, that weaken the prestige of an American travel document. But for the most part, it comes down to taxes. Now, this is simply not true, but it speaks to how the media wants to shame people. Let's be honest. I know people who were literally, like myself, paying zero or very little tax to the U.S. legally. They filed all the forms, but you know what? They lived in fear. What if I miss one? $10,000 penalty here, $25,000 penalty here, half the value of the account over here. I've had friends who live in Switzerland, can't get a mortgage, or the bank's going to call their mortgage because they're an American. We don't want Americans anymore. If you don't give us $1 million francs, you're out of your house. Go live in the street. What are you going to do? It's not all about taxes, but the media wants to position it that way because it's such a small percentage that they can do that and they can get away with it. The article continues. Talks about another individual. Born in Georgia to parents studying there. This guy returned with them to Belgium when he was 2 months old. Now his bank is threatening to close his shared account with his wife, and he said that U.S. officials have offered little help. They say I'm an American citizen because I was born there. They don't even want to help me, he said. A gentleman named Patrick. Here's a guy who was born in Belgium, or born in Georgia, went back to Belgium at 2 months old, lived there his entire life. Now he can't get a bank account. He doesn't consider himself an American, but the government does. Oh, but wait, they don't want to help him. So which one is it? The answer is, it doesn't have to be one or the other, because they're in control. Even Boris Johnson, to the best of my knowledge, don't hold me to this, but to the best of my knowledge, I believe it was surmised, eventually just said, you know what, here's your money, IRS, go away. Even a guy like that, you can't fight City Hall, you can't fight the IRS. The U.S. government does not care why you can't renounce. Bureaucrats, corporate workers, all the kinds of people that we talk about, all the people that I've never really, understood in my life. I grew up in a business family. I've never understood what it's like to be a big corporate worker, or to work at a Marriott hotel, or to work for a bureaucrat and to say, I don't know, this is not my job. They don't care. And if that means you've got to go an entire year and you've got to have your bank account closed, your mortgage called, be put out in the street, if you've got to pay millions of dollars in extra taxes because some law changed and you couldn't get out because, hey, pandemic, the bureaucrats who worked 3 hours a day to begin with now are sitting at home getting their full paycheck while all of your compatriots back home are scraping by on unemployment. They feel okay about that, and they feel even more okay with not helping you. I feel a great sense of peace knowing that I am now in control of my own destiny, and I believe that the St. Lucian government is not going to track me down all around the world trying to extort money from me or make my life difficult, or any of the other countries that I may be a citizen or a resident of. And I've been able to live my life intentionally. I've been able to contribute to society not through forced taxation in countries I don't live in, but through voluntary charitable giving that actually has a result, unlike what the bureaucrats do, where they waste your money and say, can't hold me accountable. The tremendous sense of peace has come from knowing that I did what Aline and Patrick and others are now not able to do, which is to leave, which is to chart my own course, and to know that eventually all the things that we talk about will become harder. And if you want to do it, if you want to get the strategies we talk about, if you want to get a passport, if you want to make investments in countries, it's going to be harder as countries impose more and more rules. I had a guy this year, couldn't buy a property overseas because he couldn't get a new U.S. passport. His had expired, didn't think he was traveling. He didn't want to travel, but to make a power of attorney to buy the property remotely, he needed a passport number. He only had an American passport, and therefore he was at the total mercy of the U.S. government to issue him a passport, not even to leave the country, but merely to move some of his money to have a plan B, because the government doesn't care. I've been working all year. I haven't skipped a beat, pandemic or no. Apparently they can't, and there's probably a reason for that. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.